Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Don't Tell Me How to Fan. My name's Josh Albrecht. With me, as always, is my good friend, John Taylor. John, I'd ask you how you're doing, but I already did that before we started. And let's just get this out of the way. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to be the bad guy. Shout out to Razor Ramon, wearing the Razor Ramon shirt. But in all seriousness, the Buck season is all but over. Dame's time in Milwaukee is essentially over. Will his career be over? That's a good question. What we know for sure is that in the Bucks game last night, game 4 of their series against the Indiana Pacers, Dame went down with a non-contact injury that ended up being a torn Achilles. And not only is he done, obviously, for the rest of this year, but it could be also the majority of next year. And he is not a spring chicken by any means. Obviously, he can still play, but this coming right off, John, the whole blood clot issue.
Yeah.
And so obviously we can get into quickly because I don't want to have this all be down. There's good things to celebrate too, but what does this mean to you going forward? What does this mean?
Well, first and foremost, my thoughts are with Damian Lillard. Obviously, him and his entire family. I wish him a speedy recovery for selfish and unselfish reasons. Living in Portland the last 10 years, like his mark on the city is like undelible. He does a lot of good in the community. And, when bad things and good things happen to him, you can feel it in this city still. And that is a testament to his character and what he did, in the early parts of his career. I mean, most of his career, all but 2 seasons of his career. So it's a bummer. People I know that know I'm a Bucks fan reached out and were like, that's awful. I mean, I think everyone's hope is that this is not the end of his career. But this is basketball. Achilles tears are significantly more serious given the type of physical activity. This is not going to be your, hey, in 8 months, can we see you back on a football field? Like the demands of a basketball player, especially on the lower part of the body, specifically knees and down. Achilles is about as bad as it can get. It is not untypical for guys to be out the entire season. And for this to happen so late, obviously in a playoff push, like I just don't see a world where Damian Lillard is available to play next year at all, sadly. And that leaves a bunch of question marks for the Bucks. And so, yeah, I don't know. We have to talk about it, but I don't really, the season's not over. It's on the brink of being over. Is there a pathway for the Bucks to win? Sure. It seems really, really bad right now.
Yeah.
You could see it yesterday. Once that injury happened, I mean, yes, they're professionals, but they also have personal relationships with Dame. Like you could tell.
They felt defeated.
Yeah.
And then they were defeated.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, shoot, man. I'd love to say I have more analysis, and I guess I do, but it just seems so silly to be like diving in the X's and O's when we're talking about a guy we gave up a lot of resources to go acquire. Is just not going to be available for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually we'll have that conversation because it's going to be inevitable, and as well as the conversation that ends, seems to be a constant of what does that mean next for Giannis, and so I don't know exactly what that means. I don't want to address it as long as they're still playing basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that the conversation will have to come at some point. It's just, I will tell you this for now. It's the biggest kick in the nuts. And some people say, to win the championship in 2021, we just had to be cursed to have a massive injury every year going forward. First of all, that championship in 2021 was outstanding. And I didn't take it for granted. I still don't. I see highlights posted annually on Twitter by Bucks Twitter accounts, and it still makes you smile. It was the most incredible sports memory I've ever been able to live. And so, a lot of times, especially on sports radio, they have the conversation of, would you trade 10 years of success but no championships for a championship and then failure? And I feel like we say yes. And then once it's gone, and then we're in that other scenario, then we want it the other way. And so I'm still sitting here going, I'm very grateful for 2021, and I wouldn't trade it for making it to multiple Eastern Conference Finals or whatever it may be.
Totally.
I
mean, ultimately,
the championship.
Ultimately, you can't. I mean, it's specifically really tough to play that what if game for a basketball team for two reasons, right? Like if we still have yet to win a championship, there's a good chance Giannis wants out. If we, you know what I mean? Like that's what happened to Dame. Dame, Damian Lillard lived the reverse. You try and you get as close as you can for as long as you can. And ultimately you just don't have enough firepower to get over the hump. And guess what? It still doesn't work out, you know?
Right.
I don't think it's being dramatic or hyperbole to say that Giannis and Dame getting paired together was not the seamless fit the entire NBA thought it would. This isn't like a Bucks fan, like, ooh, wouldn't it be fun? Like everyone agreed a dominant, like point first ball handler with Giannis could run like the most deadly pick and roll game. You know what I mean? Like it just all made sense on paper and it just never worked out that way.
It just didn't work.
For a myriad of reasons, you know? And so, and they found fun and creative ways to continue to score, play around each other. But unfortunately, Father Time is undefeated. And I just think like, we're running out of time. We've officially ran out of assets. So, you know, I wouldn't trade it either. Because the truth is, like, you look at like that championship we won, like James Harden and Kyrie Irving both went out that series, and we still almost lost that. You know, look at the Clippers, Kawhi and Paul George. Every single year since 2019 was marred with injury. They never even sniffed a Western Conference Finals. Like this is just basketball, and so you can't. I can't be surprised. You can do whatever you want. I meant the royal you. You just can't be surprised when players want to move on, when things don't work, because unfortunately, it's the nature of guaranteed contracts. Like you can't just like let this guy go. I mean, obviously there's injury protections anyways, but it's a big contract. Like this is truly a worst case scenario. And like I said, like
can't trade Dame.
Yep. There is like apparently some very slim opportunities to like grant like a medical exemption, which would allow the Bucks, I think if he is confirmed unable to return by like June 2026. And this is all stuff I saw posted online, and I'm just kind of going off memory, but they could technically sign somebody who doesn't count against the cap. But I think there still is like apron implications, but there would be some relief in some ways, but it's like really unlikely for it to happen. And then obviously the same one would be like a medical retirement. Like there's a way that they can force him to retire and they could gain access to that cap. I still think there's like exceptions involved with that, which means they don't have that full dollar amount. His contract does not just become magically available to us. There is no world in which Dame just gets off the books if he's not playing over the next 2 years. It's just not how the NBA works. And whether that's good or bad is in the eye of the beholder, but it makes these situations particularly painful.
Right.
So
we'll see. There's a big looming question that will be addressed that we have to discuss with Giannis, that we're going to discuss, and I guess the future of this team. But I don't want to do it until the nail's in the coffin.
Yep.
And so honestly, that might just be the next podcast. You know, I mean, based on more than likely scenarios, you know, especially with that series heading back to you know, Indiana. So we'll see how that turns out. Positive stuff. Can we get to positive stuff, please? Let's do happy things. I'm gonna do happy things. The NFL draft happened.
Over 600,000 people in attendance.
Yes.
In little old Green Bay. How were they going to do it?
I was one of them. I got to go on Friday.
We had the worst weather day, correct?
Yes. Yep. It was beautiful the Thursday and Saturday. It was still very cool to see. Very cool to be a part of. It was awesome to see all of those people there. I will say, I feel like out of that 600,000, I did not see a ton of people that like traveled. You know, I didn't see, it was not like 70% Packer fans and then like, you know, 10% NFC North fans and then 10% just random other fans. It was like 88% Packer fans, and then 10% anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know honestly if that is against what's common when the draft is other places. I feel like the way that they show it on TV makes it look like fans from all teams go.
Yeah.
But that was not.
Yeah, I think
That
they're
was not
definitely.
it.
I think there's definitely maybe some production elements where my guess is they're trying to pocket, and I think there's like a natural, like congregating of fans of certain teams. Like you want to be around, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was some happening. I mean, the biggest thing about the draft being in the Green Bay was logistically, it probably did turn off a lot of people wanting to travel. I mean, from some of the anecdotes, it seems like there were still people that traveled. Like there was like all of the surrounding like hotels, motels, Airbnbs, VRB, any sort of short-term housing was booked up. And so that's hugely positive. The truth is, who cares? It's awesome that it was 80% Packers fans. Like if we were talking about 400,000 people and it was mostly Packer fans, that's a problem because then you go, oh, they're never going to come back to Green Bay. But the fact of the matter is that they had over the weekend 6 times the amount of population that Green Bay has. Like the Detroit Times posted something saying like Green Bay can't do it like us, and it's like,
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I tweeted it because I was like, yeah, no, duh, they literally can't. You're talking about a major metropolitan city versus the town of Green Bay. Like, I understand like trying to do whatever weird politicking involved,
but crushed expectations.
Yeah, 100%.
Expectations that the NFL had were destroyed by the number of people that showed up. And I thought it was going to be just a complete crap show. I thought there was going to be stuff all over the place. No one was going to be able to get in, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Obviously, night one, there was at one time it was capped because too many people were in the actual area. So people couldn't get in. But it was all handled very smoothly. I was very impressed with the way that the whole thing was actually ran and set up. And we had a great time. Awesome. And I was very, very happy to be able to be there. Got this hat, draft hat. Was just very, very grateful that I was able to experience it in case it never happens again.
Yeah. So, I think I don't know what the rotation is, but I think there should be a very real conversation and consideration. Like teams like the Packers, the Steelers, like the Lions. I mean, they're indoors, so maybe they wouldn't, but it's like these northern cold weather stadiums, like there is no reason why we all shouldn't be in rotation every like 10 years. You know what I mean? For this exact reason, like and I'm going to use a wrestling metaphor. If the Super Bowl is the WrestleMania, the draft is the SummerSlam. It's like the second biggest event. And I think some of the markets that just are never going to be able to benefit from hosting a Super Bowl, a la Green Bay, Wisconsin. I think like there should be a third of the teams are just non sequiturs for that. And I think there should be a consideration for getting bids in and being a part of a rotation, because logistically, if it can happen in Green Bay, it can happen anywhere. So like
and they proved it can happen in Green Bay.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the mecca of sports in all of North America. So, I mean, I don't know how many people traveled, but you know, there's a really good chance affordability wise, being able to afford tickets, like just getting to the draft, traveling to Green Bay for the draft. I mean, it's a bucket list item for a lot of people. So I'm hoping that they were able to take advantage of this, you know? And I'm sure as reports come out, we're going to get a lot more anecdotes from that, but, yeah, really awesome stuff. What a beautiful swan song to Mark Murphy's presidency. You know, 100%. when we talk about this kind of being the thing he was working for, like the culmination of his work, but you think about how much people laughed and criticized his Titletown district, the big slide, like all of these things that were distracting from football. And for the audio listeners, I'm putting it in quotes, but the fan experience is king. You know, there's a reason why attendance in the NFL is where it is. And you talk about viewership and engagement across other sports are going down and football is going up. It's because there's a myriad of factors at play, but I think the NFL teams have done a great job of buying up real estate around their stadiums and making it a all encompassing, all inclusive event. And
It is no longer just about the game.
Absolutely not. And that's okay. I mean, it's important, right? So I think, and the fact that Titletown, the Packers are publicly owned, I think that investment is very apparent in the town, in the Titletown district, in the improvements that they make. I just mean everything about it. I think really just underlines and highlights how great of a job Mark Murphy did. So Ed Policy is, grabbing the football on, I would say the 10 or 15 yard line, about to score another touchdown. So he's just got to keep the ship moving in the right direction,
Yeah.
So,
yep. Very lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky that Murphy did what he did and the way that he did it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the picks, because first of all, if you didn't watch the draft episode we did prior to watching the draft, you missed out, or maybe you just like are already knew everything. But for the people like I went back and watched it again after, and I was so appreciative. I was like, oh, John brought up that guy. Oh, that's the guy that John said. And then when those guys started coming off the board, I was like, dang it, that's probably not good. But if I couldn't have had a pass rusher in the first round, I said for marketing reasons, all the right reasons, I said for marketing reasons, I wanted wide receiver Matthew Golden so that they could say that the pick was green and golden. It just was, I mean, come on, serve it up, too easy. And then you texted me and you were like, they got him. That's your wish came true. And so for the first time since 2002, the Packers selected a wide receiver with their first round pick. Your thoughts on Matthew Golden?
I love the pick. I really do. I think I blacked out and talked for over an hour about the draft. Kidding. But a lot of the conversation was like, I think I had reservations about Golden because I just think there were better options at wide receiver. I think really the only one that I was really pushing back on was this idea that maybe Emeka Egbuka would be a better fit for our offense. He ends up getting drafted well before, I think, like he gets picked 19.
Yep.
We had conversations about trading up for Tet. That was never going to happen. The Panthers took him, which was smart because he is a top 10 talent either way. I will say Todd McShay, he's a guy who knows ball, has Matthew Golden as his number one wide receiver. And that's like including Travis Hunter, so there are a lot of people. He definitely has sure hands. I really like the pick a lot. He's 5'9", 190. So he's got that Jaden Reed build. He's a little small for what the Packers typically like, but you know what you can't argue with? 4.29 40. That's fast.
Yep.
And I hear a lot of people saying, well, he doesn't play like that. Yeah, he does. I understand running in your underwear in Indianapolis and then at your pro day is not the same as wearing pads. And obviously times are going to adjust, but fast is fast and he's fast. And I've been watching a lot of tape and hearing some analysis about Matthew Golden. And a lot of people are pointing out the fact that Quinn Ewers can't throw a football like Jordan Love can throw a football. Like there's a really good chance Matthew Golden could not go full out because there's no way his quarterback could get the ball to him in that way. So we'll find out real fast. But if you look at his tape, it translates. He's fast. I think he's got incredible hands. And I think his catch radius is bigger, a la Jaden Reed, like just the ability to go up and catch balls. His wingspan is a lot bigger than what his body would typically you'd expect from a body type of that size. He can win all three levels. He's like a really savvy route runner. His route tree is developed. So I do like him. I think like some of his drawbacks are just that you hear that, he doesn't have a ton of yak. He's not like a yak monster. He's going to catch the ball, but his ability to wiggle and make defenders miss could get better. So time will tell. We'll see. But like I said, when we talk about positional value, especially in the first one, you kept asking me who are they going to pick. And I kept saying, depending on how the board breaks, there's only so many different ways, it's like all of a sudden the guys you would trade up for, in my opinion, there was only one, was gone too fast. You were never going to trade into the top 10. You start looking at defensive interior guys. 3 of them, Harmon went, and then Kenneth Grant went. We were never going to get Mason Graham because he was like a top 5 pick, but you get like the top 3 guys are all gone. We start looking at edge rushers. I say, don't be surprised if they take Shamar Stewart. He goes really fast. I mean, Mikael Williams, somebody we were hoping could maybe fall. He got selected by like early 11th by the 49ers. So you just start looking at positional value. And I think that ultimately ends up being the tail of the tape here for this entire draft. Like Goody said in his press conference after day 2, like, if you thought I would be coming up here to talk about 3 offensive picks in the first 2 rounds and 2 of them would be wide receivers, you'd be mistaken. And I think that's absolutely right. I think when people talk about this draft, they're going to talk about a trench-heavy draft between offensive linemen and defensive linemen, and boy, did they go on runs. Surprisingly, I think for the first time ever, Goody didn't trade. We sticked and picked at all 8 spots, which would definitely not have been on my bingo card. And
there were it almost broke a record, right, in the first round for least amount of trades, period.
Yep. Yeah.
I think it got to the minimum. I think there were 3.
Yep. Yeah. Jaguars traded up to grab Travis Hunter.
Yep.
That was kind of wild. And then the Eagles traded up 1 spot to get Jalen Walker, and then the Giants. The Giants Falcons. So maybe the Eagles did trade. So there was 4 trades.
Yeah.
Because Giants traded back in to get Jackson Dart at the end of the first, and then obviously the Falcons traded back in to get James Pierce Jr., which I do not understand. And they gave up a 2026 first round pick to be able to get back in. All reports are they love that guy, but I did not even have him as a first round grade. So I was just but this is one of those things, man. You know, the GMs, scouting departments fall in love with guys. They get to meet them. They get to meet their family. They get to see a lot more. They get a lot more access than we do, obviously. And sometimes you got to go get a guy you like. And so the Falcons went ahead and did that. So kind of interesting.
Let's talk about the second round pick, Anthony Belton from NC State, who was the pick that I was there to witness.
Yeah.
I then texted you, and I believe your response was interesting.
Yeah.
I did not have a tackle like there or anywhere near there. You want to explain that interesting comment?
Yeah. Post-draft. Yeah, I said interesting because I had thought Anthony Belton would have made sense for the Packers, but I had him projected maybe being available in like the 4th round. So by consensus, if you look like the consensus draft board, this was probably a reach by most people's standards. However, when you look at the things that the Packers value, which is something we talked about last episode on that draft primer, like they want versatile big guys who can move from the inside and play either inside or outside at lineman. And that's Anthony Belton. He played left tackle at NC State. When you look at what they asked him to do and what he excelled and didn't excel at, he definitely projects as a guard in the league. And I think for the Packers, this to me screams earnest and honest to goodness competition at the right guard position. I think they're trying to say either Sean Ryan's going to win this position or it's going to be Belton's to take. I said interesting originally to answer your question because it made sense. They're not paying Rasheed Walker. He's what left tackle money is what it is. They're not going to pay it. They got Jordan Morgan to potentially either steal right guard from Sean Ryan or replace Rasheed Walker. And I think that's absolutely what the contingency plan is. They're not going to pay him. They're going to extend Zach Tom. You lose Josh Myers. You don't sign anybody. It's like all of a sudden the line is very thin. They do not believe in Kadeem Telfort, Travis Glover. That was super apparent. It's like why they went out and got Banks. You just look at it and you go like the Packers are making a concerted effort to get massive on the offensive line. Anthony Belton is a big dude. Before he got drafted, the largest guard in the Goody era was Aaron Banks. And
Belton, for like a month.
And then Belton clears him by like 20 pounds. But he's fast on his feet. He's quick. He can pull. Like, there's that hilarious term that they give linemen like dancing bear. He has fast feet for a guy that size. And so, listen, I say it's interesting for that. And I also say it's interesting because if there's any position group that the Packers have shown that we should give them our unwavering faith in, it's clearly the offensive line. They know what they're doing. They know how to draft these players. They know how to develop them. And so I think it's interesting. Full disclosure, while you were at Lambeau Field, I was getting a haircut. I've been overdue. And so I also said interesting because I did not see the run of players that happened right before this pick. And if you look, I mean, even as far as at the end of the first round, Tyleik Williams goes in the first round you weren't expecting. And then all of a sudden we're losing defensive interior players. Well, Walter Nolan went way faster. And then if you look, I don't have the draft order, but there is a considerable amount of edges and defensive interior players who went before the Packers. And I think most notably, Oladejo, a guy I had mentioned, he got drafted like a pick or two right before the Packers, and I think they would have stick and picked there. I think they would have been interested in a few of the other edge rushers and but they were all gone. They just were gone. And I don't think they were trying to move up. I think, like I said, they were going to be pretty happy with a bunch of guys falling to their board. We can talk about the next pick because I think this one's significantly more interesting. I think they took Anthony Belton going, okay, on the board, this is our consensus best player available. I truly believe that, and I see a ton of value. I did not think they were going to draft Savion Williams. Savion, I've heard it pronounced both ways. Either way, the 6'4", 220-pounder from TCU. I did not expect
another wide receiver. Yeah, so we're at the draft and we're now hanging out with some people at kind of like a post-draft party, even though the draft's still happening. And we see that pick on TV, and I go, wide receiver, tackle, wide receiver. Who had that on their bingo card for the first 3 rounds? Anybody? No, of course not. I was, at this point, it just became what it has always been, right? So like when I saw that pick, I just laughed. And I went, okay. This is when I stopped trying to reason, and I just go, trust in Goody. They know what they're doing better than I do, and I just let it be.
Yeah.
But yeah, talk to me about Savion Williams.
Well, a lot of people are calling him the league's next Cordarrelle Patterson. Cordarrelle Patterson. Anyways, the Joker type player that was on the Bears and then made his career in Atlanta. They kind of realized they could use to rush him, but he's a guy who it is undeniable his ability to make explosive plays when he gets the ball in his hand. A lot of his TCU cut up are him getting either, well, first of all, he can run Wildcat. Apparently some personnel from TCU tweeted, you just got the best football thrower on the entire roster last year in Savion Williams. So he's explosive. He's dynamic. He's a playmaker. He's huge. It's like if you thought it was fun watching them give Jaden Reed end in rounds, make him 6 inches taller and 50 pounds heavier, or 30, 40. You get my point. He's a big, versatile guy. The biggest knock on him is just that he needs to get better at catching the football. He needs to be a little more polished in route running. He's a classic example of somebody who clearly has just his entire life been the most athletic and dominant person on the football field. And that's going to change in the NFL. And so he's going to have to spend some very real time learning how to become a wide receiver in the NFL. And while that is happening, we can really put this idea to the test. I said it a bunch last season. Matt LaFleur might be the best head coach, play caller in the entire league at scheming guys open and manufacturing touches. And so this is a Matt LaFleur special. It has his stink written all over it. My guess is Matt LaFleur is sitting there and he's like, if you think this is the best player available, draft him. I can do a ton with him. And it signals 2 things too for Jordan Love. He needs more weapons, and they need to make sure that they can protect him in any situation. And so I was surprised at the pick. However, you start digging into what he can do right now for you in the short term, in terms of gadget plays and all of those fun things he likes to run. It becomes pretty obvious that he is somebody that they could make use of right away. Especially because Matthew Golden can, I think, kick return, and Savion Williams can punt return. So from a team's perspective, even if these guys can't crack the rotation, I think Golden will for sure.
Yeah.
Even if you only see Savion Williams on the field for 10 to 15 plays designed for him throughout a game, he's going to be able to make his presence known in special teams. So that's my initial thoughts on
I just worry a little bit too, because he was a 3rd round pick, and that's for the most part been, where the luck does not lie. Hopefully he breaks that one.
Yeah,
breaks some tackles.
Yeah.
So,
well, the big thing I wanted to say too is I think the other reason why we found ourselves drafting a wide receiver in the 3rd round is I think at the 2nd round you get Anthony Belton thinking, cool, there's 6 to 7 guys on our board, and I kind of named a bunch of guys who I thought they would have liked to take at that spot. All of a sudden, I think at 61 is when it gets the wheels fall off real fast. All of a sudden, Trey Amos is off the board. 2D tackles go off the board. And that's the end of the 2nd. Omar Norman Lott and then Shamar Turner, who are guys that I think would have been a reach at 2 for the Packers, just given their needs. And then you start looking at all the cornerbacks we had discussed. Darian Porter was a guy I took in my draft. He ended up going in the 3rd round, pick number 68. Landon Jackson, a guy who people thought could maybe have gotten picked in the 1st round if somebody felt like reaching. That's somebody we talked about as a 2nd round option. Azure Thomas and Siobhan Revel Jr. He was a guy I really liked. And then you look at like Princely, Una Mienin, Jordan Birch. I'm just calling out Noel Williams, and then the Packers pick at 87. My guess, and I feel really strongly about this, they thought Noel Williams was going to fall to them at 87. There's no reason to think he wouldn't. And then all of a sudden Jacob Parrish goes, Chiefs grab up Noel Williams, and then the next cornerback was not projected to go until like the 5th round. And I don't think a cornerback went again until late in the 4th anyways. So especially ones that would fit the Packers' needs. There was one cornerback taken in the 4th round. And it was never going to be a player that the Packers would have taken. So really, really interesting stuff.
So then did you have D-line for the next 3 picks?
Yes and no. Yes and no, because
I didn't. I thought eventually in there would be
there'd be a cornerback. Yeah. I'm not gonna. I guess I thought maybe there'd be a cornerback in that 5th. I think when they took Colin Oliver, there was a cornerback up that I thought they were going to take. I'd have to like go through some like group messages I had. There's somebody I was like, oh, they're probably going to grab him. Baron Sorrell. First of all, what an incredible story, right? I was getting coffee with my buddy on Saturday morning, and all of a sudden I throw out my phone. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Packers are making their pick. Their pick is in." So I threw it up on the stream. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Roger Goodell walked out, and I was like, "Why is Roger?"
I also thought this was so.
I was like, and I said out loud, I was like, "What is Roger Goodell doing, out in Green Bay still?" And I was like, I didn't think he made.
Round,
I didn't think he made picks post the 1st, really, if I'm honest, because I learned most guys aren't still in the green room. That's why he's not out there making those picks.
Yeah.
They announced Baron Sorrell, a guy who Packers like draft people, specifically like Ross Uglum and like Justice Mosqueda. They got together and were just talking about how if you look at this guy's film, he is just like a really strong, solid player, has an insane bench. It's like combined bench rep is like 27 or something. So just really strong. And they were loving it, and they said if they drafted him, they'd be so happy. I think what ended up happening in this draft is there were so many valuable and worthwhile prospects on the defensive line that I just think that this is a guy who just tape got away from him. I just don't know if they ever really got an opportunity to really dive in and dig into this tape like you would have expected. So, he's graded out more to be like a 2nd round pick when you look at everything. I think if he would have went out last year or next year, I think he gets drafted way sooner than the 4th. I think realistically, this could be the best positional value. Baron Sorrell will come in and be a key contributor to that defensive line almost immediately, especially with like TJ Slayton being gone. Some other questions, we're still playing Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden. Like he is immediately just as good as them, if not better, just giving off the tools and the traits in his production at Texas. So very exciting.
But let's talk about for a second the fact that he stuck around.
Yeah.
And that then he goes to the home team of the draft. Right. So unless because I wasn't there right for round 4, but unless I'm not understanding the story right, he was there because he wanted to experience having his name called. He wanted to experience being at the draft and walking across the stage and shaking the commissioner's hand, even if it wasn't going to be a first round pick. He wanted to experience that. I love that. I don't understand at all why people pass up the draft. To me, and this is going to be an awful comparison, but just stay with me. To me, it's kind of like your that doesn't even work. I was going to say like a prom, like your prom, right? Like maybe you don't dance, like maybe it's not your scene, but you can't just go any year, right? Like you have this opportunity and then it's done. So like even if you don't stay the whole time, even if you don't want to, like this is it. You're either going to go, you're going to experience it, or you're never going to be able to experience it. These guys that are getting drafted, whether you can sit there and be like, well, yeah, but I'm predicted to go in the 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever. You have one opportunity to experience yourself getting drafted, and to not do it at the draft, but instead be one of the people that sit on a couch at home is nuts to me. I'm 100% with Sorrell of wanting to be there and experience it. And I'm just so happy that then on top of it, he got to take it even, a step further. As I'm watching it live, I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. How did they know that we were going to be drafting this guy? Why is this guy still here? Now he's doing go pack go chance with a selfie stick. What's happening? This is the weirdest draft pick I've ever seen. But then you hear the story, you learn a little bit more, and how freaking cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, yeah, like I don't know of any other Packers picks that got to go do the Lambeau Leap. It's like he kind of got picked perfectly where they were not entertaining a lot of players, so he got to just get full access. Like he did a live press conference on day 3 of the NFL draft, and to see him get emotional about his family and everything else. You're just talking about a guy who like clearly loves ball, right? You hear everybody talk about it.
Already a huge win.
Yeah, I mean, just like
he is the Packer way, right? We joke about the Packer way.
Yep,
that's him.
Him sticking around just speaks to the mentality of not taking opportunities for granted, always wanting to get the most out of every opportunity. Like, he thought he was going to go in the 2nd round, right? So he came thinking that he would get his Friday night flowers. Didn't happen given the way the draft worked out and the way the boards go on these runs. They said he was the only person in the green room. So he woke up and he said he talked to his family and they were like, we're still in Green Bay. Why wouldn't we go? And what a beautiful attitude, mentality to have. I will say, when you talk about like, is it a surprise that he went to the Packers? It's not as much of a surprise as you think. And the reason why I say this is, especially with Goody in this front office, pay attention to their top 30 visits, the one they announced, right? They announced 25 players. And if they're still on the board, these are the guys they're going to pursue. Like 5 of their players were guys that they brought in on top 25 visits. So they definitely really liked him. You see that character and that kind of attitude ooze out of Sorrell almost immediately. So Barron, it's awesome. And I think the tape, it's awesome to have feel good stories, but it's great when the tape meets that feel good story. Like I want to root for this guy because of his attitude. And I think I can root for this guy because of his ability. Like I think he really could be really great. So even
if it takes some time, we'll always have that story.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. All right, I want to bounce around a few things. I know normally you kind of steer the ship, but I kind of want to power through some things. So I think in most drafts, we always want to talk about our first round picks and is this a good draft or a bad draft? I think realistically, if you can get 3 or 4 meaningful players to contribute on your team by the 2nd year of a draft, that's a good draft, whether you like the picks or not, right? Like Javon Bullard, Evan Williams, Edgerrin Cooper, Jordan Morgan aside, that's a strong draft. The fact that we got 3 guys who came in and started, right? So I'm just this is the kind of conversation I want to have. So when we look at grading this draft, it did not break the way I think any of us thought they would. They failed to really address cornerback in any sort of meaningful way, which we'll obviously talk about at the end. I think they were really failing and then ultimately figured out a way, or at least a plan of attack on the one tech, right? Kenny Clark needs a backup at nose tackle so he can get a break, or play at the 3 technique where he's been known to pass rush better, or just give multiple looks. I think that specifically right now, Matthew Golden, Anthony Belton, and Baron Sorrell. There's your three guys who I think will make this a good draft. If Savion Williams can figure out catching and they can make him use as a weapon, then I think you're talking about four players who clear this, like, is this going to be a good draft or not bar pretty easily. Like, I think we're already there with three of them. The reason why I'm saying all this is this next pick is so un-Packersy and so unrealistic and so exciting. It screams Jeff Hafley DNA all over it. They draft Colin Oliver, 240-pound edge rusher out of Oklahoma State. And if you look at his tape, oh boy, when he is trying to defend the pass rushing, DPR, he is a DPR monster. Can you play him on a single rundown? Absolutely not. He is going to get absolutely blown up. But when you look at his size and speed, it is not hyperbole to say there's shades of Clay Matthews in it, as in a guy who has a skill set that can beat and bend the edge to get home to the quarterback at a position that is not edge, right? Clay Matthews was not. We were still a 4-3 defense. Clay Matthews was just a guy who could get after it on blitzes. That's this guy. If Colin Oliver is playing more than 10 snaps a game, we are in big trouble because they're just going to run at him. So he is only going to play in obvious third downs or passing situations. Sure. He is going to be a monster on special teams, given his size and traits. So, but when you talk about insanely exciting, interesting players, Colin Oliver is going to be there. And let me tell you what, we are going to be talking about him a lot at training camp. I'm saying this now. Remember, he cannot defend against the run. So when we see him eat quarterbacks and eat blocks for dinner, lunch, and breakfast, or however you want to talk about it, at the end of the day, against real NFL players, he is a huge liability in the run, and he is so wildly exciting in the pass rush. So I'm saying all that to say it's a 5th round pick. He's either going to work or it isn't, but boy, it's probably the most volatile pick in the entire draft. And I just love that shift in attitude, because I think in other drafts, in other situations, there's no way, and other defensive coordinators, right? There's no way that they look at a guy like that and say, like, we can use these traits. And I think that's very exciting. So
I love it.
And then, Warren Brinson, I want to talk about him in relation to another undrafted free agent, Nazir Stackhouse. Basically, the Packers drafted both nose tackles out of Georgia from last year. One was drafted, with the 198th pick in the 6th round. That was Warren Brinson. Yep. And then his counterpart, like I said, Nazir Stackhouse. He was a 3-year contributor, the undrafted free agent. And he was projected by most to go in the 5th or 6th round. And I think obviously, like, the way every single team seemed to aggressively attack the interior defensive line, I think these guys just fell. But Brinson's weighing 315. Stackhouse is 327 pounds. I love just throwing, like, Goody clearly loves Georgia Bulldog defensive players. And rightfully so. They've produced well for him in the past, or have proven to be serviceable players, just given the talent of the SEC and specifically the Georgia Bulldogs, like dynastic, like, competitiveness in that conference and the national landscape. They're just going to throw them both and see what sticks. And I think that's really great.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. My last point on the draft, they didn't get a cornerback. Micah Robinson, 7th round. Sounds like he's got some good speed on him. He's got good weight and good size. I think he's like 6'. He's 5'11". Like 5'11", 190 pounds, right? 184. Good. I'm glad you got it up, because I've been looking at a bunch of other stuff. I don't know. We'll see. He'll be able to play teams.
He's a 7th round cornerback pick. That's all you need to know. It's a flyer.
It's the same thing like Kalen King last year, and we do have a weird history of getting late round draft picks and having them produce. So especially in the cornerback position. But
I'm not saying anything. But also keep in mind, like, he's not the answer.
No.
Okay.
Who could be the answer? And I say this tongue in cheek, but I got to shout him out. Bugs Brown from Florida Atlantic. Have you heard about this guy that they drafted at corner, or signed undrafted?
No.
He is a 6'1", 225-pound cornerback. who ran 4.53.
Named Bugs.
Named Bugs.
Perfect.
Yeah, half of the linebackers in college are smaller than he is. So just let you know.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is you hear those stats and you go, oh, he's a cornerback. He must play in the slot, right? Wrong. Almost exclusively an outside linebacker at small safety size or like hybrid. Either way, fucking hilarious. Do I think he makes a team? Maybe. He could be a special teams guy. But he's just a really funny guy, I want to point out. And then two things to report today. And I'm just kind of throwing a bunch of shit at you, Josh. Sorry, but
that's okay.
The Packers in undrafted, so at the end of this, John Williams, yeah, he could be a good guard. I can see why they drafted him. Versatility, blah, 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 blah. Good depth piece. You might push out Travis Glover. There's a lot of linemen signed right now. So they're just going to let talent sort all of that out. But I think the biggest undrafted free agent that they signed was Jamon Dumas Johnson. He's another highly regarded free agent. I think Dane Brugler of the Beast had him as a borderline draft choice. But other people had him higher. He's 235. He ran a 4.6 40. And he has that frame and speed for the position. So, and I think the big thing that we didn't really talk about a ton was just that they really only have 5 linebackers. Goody was very apparent last season or earlier this year, just saying they did not love who they had in terms of playable options behind Isaiah McDuffie and Eric Wilson as guys got hurt. Quay was missing a considerable chunk of time. I think he's a guy that could come in and immediately slot to maybe be a backup Sam linebacker behind Isaiah McDuffie. And I think that's pretty cool. And then really like an hour before we started this podcast and yesterday, Isaiah Simmons tweeted cheese trap. The Packers signed him to a 1-year deal. Isaiah Simmons, former top 10 pick from Arizona, didn't really pan out. I mean, we'll see. He's going to be another guy who's competing at the end of the roster. We can't get her
camp for sure.
Yeah, you cannot assume. I think he'll beat out a lot of guys. I think it speaks to the fact that I think Tyron Hopper sadly was a massive whiff last year. It felt like a reach at the time, and I think it's proving to be a reach because you really just don't bring in a bunch of guaranteed talent. A lot of people are saying Jamon Dumas Johnson, the undrafted free agent, he might have been one of the top 3, top 5 best undrafted free agents available. So the Packers went out and got him. And secured that. And so it's just kind of interesting how that all shakes out. So you just never know, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with the draft. I think ultimately cornerback room still feels uncomfortable, and that's being generous. I think there is a world where they think Hobbs can play on the boundary on a very value-friendly contract if he got signed as a slot, and they can keep Javon Bullard, and then you have Keyshawn and Carrington Valentine and Hobbs just battling out for the boundary. You inject a little bit of talent. Let me turn this question on to you.
It makes it easier on them too. Yeah. If you now have pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about that. We talked that a ton last year. That the cornerbacks can only do much when Jalen Hurts had over 7 seconds to throw that first touchdown.
You have 8 seconds to throw the ball. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. So the defensive line needs to get better. And I think a lot of this draft showed what we were talking about on the draft primer, which is I said, if we don't draft a ton of edge players, they clearly didn't believe in the coach. I think there's a healthy mixture of the both. You let enough guys leave, but they did not overhaul and they did not spend premium picks on this position. If they would have reached for somebody in the first or second round, I would have said that they do not believe in their personnel. I think they're really hoping that this defensive line coach that they got from the Patriots can do something with that room. And I think there's reason for optimism there. And then I think the other thing was that they showed that they don't really fully believe in this wide receiver room. And I know it's easy to say it's contracts, but they're not out of contracts yet, right?
Yeah.
The only guy they really needed to replace was Christian Watson due to that injury. I'm not convinced that they aren't maybe looking to move Romeo Doubs before the season. I think his fate is all but sealed. And I think they were probably shopping him around in packages. When you think about who leaked the DK Metcalf story, it was probably Dobbs camp. You got to assume he was a part of it. They wanted a younger guy. They probably wanted Reed or Wicks more than they wanted Dobbs, but they're not happy with that room, and they shouldn't be. And I think it's up to that room and that specific group of players to prove that they're more similar to the way they played 2 years ago than the way they did last year.
I think it's more. I think it's more than those guys though too. I was actually talking to our buddy Brian about this when we were on our way to state bowling from the draft, and we talked about how they probably looked at how many snaps Malik Heath and Bo Melton were getting, and they were going, boy oh boy, okay, like we need to even if it's not necessarily about Dobbs and and Reed and that line, but the guys after them, right? When Watson goes down or in different packages, now you're giving these other guys a lot more playing time than you probably would prefer because the depth just wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's going to be great for Cam to have some of these young guns in there and at the very least light a fire under the asses of some of these guys that maybe are a little too overconfident in their abilities and where they sit right now. Don't forget too, we got Mecole Hardman. It's going to be in camp.
I mean, I'm officially under the belief that he might not even make it out of camp.
Oh, I don't think he's going to make it out of camp, but he'll be at camp.
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
I'm interested. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be an exciting camp. I'm excited to see with all these different wide receivers that are there, the stories that are coming out, and just watching the plays and hearing how these guys do, because they got a lot of people in the wide receiver room right now, and they are all not making it.
I hear a lot of people talk about how we drafted Matthew Golden to replace Christian Watson, and it's like we drafted Matthew Golden to replace Bo Melton. We got guys in the room to make the bottom of the depth chart better, not to replace a top end. I mean, injuries and I mean, he's just not going to be a factor. I mean, ignore all of the weird Watson family drama that happened over the weekend that like got blown up out of proportion. I'll just say this: if you can't understand why the Packers felt like they needed to add more playmakers to that roster, when you look at the way that they were able to not produce offensively last year, then you're not as unbiased as you think you are. Okay. Not everything is just an X's and O's fit. At some point, they just became unhappy with the production there. And I don't blame them. Jordan Love, I know, was hurt and dealing with something, and they've started to cop to that a lot more. You look at like the Matt LaFleur circuit, Brian Gutekunst, they all were like saying, Jordan Love was more bothered by that injury, that string of injuries. But at the end of the day, his receivers did not help him out last year.
No.
And so we just need to get, you just got to get more talent in there. So, really exciting draft. Nothing like, it's very exciting that Matthew Golden got drafted in the first round. They broke that he was born after the last first round wide receiver in Javon Walker in 2002. It's awesome that they let Mark Murphy make the announcement and he went off script. I mean, he cut that like a wrestling promo.
He really did. It was awesome.
Like, for the first time since 2002, the crowd starts going crazy. Everybody knows. He goes, the Packers have drafted a wide receiver. The crowd's going crazy. Matthew Golden absolutely explodes, and he's there. Golden grabs the mic. He's got to learn that it's go Pack go.
That was the one.
Not go Pack on three. Yeah,
no, he said Green Bay. Not even go Pack. He said Green Bay, and I was like, oh no, do the fans even know what to say? Like we're so trained to not. But they did. They were like, okay, Green Bay, yeah. But I was like, okay, we're gonna give you a pass on that. It's literally your first day on.
He'll learn. I mean, the only other pass they got to do is they got to force Malik Willis to change numbers or trade him, because 22 for a wide receiver is not going to work. But I think he's just waiting for a 2 to become available. But I'm sidetracking. That was a great pick. I love a lot of what they did. Like I said, it's not about the picks, it's about the process. And I don't think they reached in anything. We'll have to keep monitoring cornerback. Will Jair still be around? My gut is still no. Hearing Goody, the way he's talking about it, he's like, we're still proceeding as normal. And normal, the last time he touched it, was we're exploring options to move Jair. So it's like, they just don't want to release him. I would have loved to have seen them try to get a pick at some point, but at some point you have to like fly and pass a physical. And if teams, given his injury concerns from last year, it's just like the likelihood of that happening. So, it seems like we could see a world where they just out and out release him, which would be unfortunate, but that almost to me seems more likely than them figuring it all out. Because I think the biggest thing is they do not want to pay him $17.5 million, period, point blank.
Yeah.
And Jair's camp has come out and said they haven't approached this about trying to restructure it. So it's not about the player, it's about the money. They do not want to pay him that much money given his availability. So who knows? Maybe they explore everything. he was at volunteer workouts. That was a huge story, but there's like a $700,000 bonus in play. And if I were Jair, I would do everything I can to keep that money. It's his if he participated. So, but at some point they're going to get in person. And if he injures himself, they're on the hook for $17.5 million. So, you know, we keep saying how there's no money escalators, but the only real, it's not an escalator, but it makes it very permanent if he injures himself now. So, we'll see. Something to keep talking about, right? It's going to be a story until it isn't, unless they somehow can rehash it. I mean, I'll be honest, I'll feel a lot better about this. Cornerback room gets a lot more exciting if it's Nate Hobbs and Jair Alexander with Keyshawn. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, but I think that bridge is a little too far gone. And
I agree.
I mean, the Packers have a history of really kind of, if you cause any sort of major waves, a la Zadarius Smith, a la, Romeo Doubs, a la Jair Alexander, they're ready to move on and with the quickness. So, but we saw Aaron Rodgers come back that we never thought we would. So you just don't know.
Don't know. What we do know is that the draft is over. We do know that Dame's time, at least this season, is over. Sad. But still plenty of things to talk about, things to look forward to, and questions that we are going to have to ponder until they get answered. But man, this has been fun. The draft was fun. I'm excited for camp, as I mentioned. I know you are too. Yeah, man, this is
real
good.
Quick.
Yes.
Did you watch SmackDown on Friday?
I did watch SmackDown.
That TLC was better than any match that was at WrestleMania. Yeah, hands down, better than all.
The number one thing I had that I said my problem with WrestleMania was that there weren't enough special matches on the card. It was all for one fall, all basic ass matches. They didn't have a ladder match, which seemed like it was sacrilege at WrestleMania. They didn't have anything of the sort. Those type of matches, that match could have easily have been a WrestleMania match, and it probably should have been. It was disgusting that it wasn't. The ability to get creative in those type of matches is so great. People don't care about who it is more than they care about seeing people do stuff. Not every match, but you need one of those type of matches, and that TLC match was great.
Yeah, my only counter to that would be there's no way that match gets 30 minutes at Mania, and so you probably can't see most of those spots.
Well, you already moved it to 2 nights, so give me a freaking break.
I'm just saying that's the way it goes. Either way, I'm just saying it is cool. Wrestling is still sick, and it was worth bringing up. So that's
very true. All right, bud. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone for tuning in to this week's Don't Tell Me How to Fan. We love you guys. Thank you for liking, subscribing, following. Make sure to check us out on the podcast if you don't already follow us there. If you're listening to us there, make sure to follow us on the YouTube channel. You can see John's pretty face and my not so pretty one. Love you guys. Thank you. Tune in next time because we are not done yet.
We up and we want all to smoke.